Chewin on fire.
Hey.
Shall we get started?
I'm hungry.
Okay.
I'm actually hungry.
Good. So let's go with this first one here. And this is just some cayenne sauce from a well-known restaurant in Mormon that may or may not have golden arches.
Golden arches.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's there. Starting out mild.
Yeah.
Starting out mild.
I can handle that. Bring it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Starting out confident. Okay. I feel it. All right. First question, Gary.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it wrong to be a homosexual? And kind of along with this question, so there's a series of questions, and most of these questions were submitted by youth. So, is it wrong to be a homosexual? Does God create people gay? Can someone be a Christian and be gay at the same time? Is it okay to be friends with someone who is, homosexual or LGBTQ plus? Isn't same-sex partnership okay as long as it's in a committed relationship? So that kind of question is like, isn't it okay to be in a relationship as long as you're committed to each other and you're not just sleeping with whoever? So maybe let's start with the first one. Is it wrong to be homosexual?
Well, those are good questions, and they're challenging questions because I think one of the things that we don't want to do is we don't want to answer them in a way that demeans anybody, and yet we want to look at what are some biblical principles, what are the principles and guidelines that God has set out, and so as we look from that view, what does God say about relationships, and what does he say about marriage? What does he say about man and woman? And so I think that's the important place to start. And so when we started that, and of course God is God is a God of love. He is a gracious God. He is compassionate. But in his word, he talks very clearly about the relationship between one man and one woman. And so he talks about that in the Old Testament, and often things may change a little bit or vary a little bit when you go to the New Testament. But the reality is when you're talking about same-sex attraction, is it wrong to be gay, all of those things, what does the New Testament say about it? And God is clear again in the New Testament when he talks about one man and one woman. And even that a father or the man is going to, the guy, he's going to leave his family and he's going to go be in a relationship with a woman. And so as we look at that, we're seeing what God has prescribed in a sense of what a relationship should look like, and so that's kind of where I go. And yet in that, how do we do that lovingly and graciously? We can be very condemning, and we can say, no, that's wrong, that's evil, that's sinful. And where in reality that might be true, and probably is true. But how do we communicate that in a way where people are walking through these different stages of life? Because I'm not going to assume that everybody that's maybe even in our youth group or even in our church, I'm not going to assume that somebody there doesn't struggle with it. So how do we, still maintain a place of being kind and gracious, but showing and revealing how God graciously and reveals truth to us, right? I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yeah, let me ask a follow-up question. So let's say, so I have friends who struggle with same-sex attraction, and they've struggled with it for a long time, like youth, and now they're adults, and they still struggle with same-sex attraction. So I guess maybe the follow-up question is what they're feeling wrong? Like, are they condemned because of how they feel or how they're made up? Or is it okay to feel things, and the behavior is the behavior that's wrong?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think we can a lot of times we pick out the aspect of same-sex attraction and those things and we apply Scripture to only those things. But I think Scripture is pretty clear that it applies to all of the areas, whether it's between a guy and a girl in the opposite sex. The same principles stand true. Like
you're saying, like celibacy. Like,
yeah.
Just, if you're not married, you can't have sex, even if you're attracted to women.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're attracted to the opposite sex, it's still outside of marriage.
Right.
That's still not that's not what God is saying. And so we will have, but yet in the same time, guys, girls, we have those feelings, right? We have those feelings of being attracted. We have those, that sexual attraction and desires. That's not the sin. What we do with that, how we act on those things is the sin. I mean, Jesus even talks about it when he was, Jesus was tempted, and so it's not a sin to be tempted. The temptation isn't the sin, but what do you do with that? How do you react on it? How do you respond to it? And so, what did Jesus do when he was tempted by Satan for 40 days? What did he do? Well, he quoted Scripture, and he said, that's not true for Satan. And so there is an aspect that, we are tempted, but the temptation isn't the wrong. The temptation isn't the sin. It's how we respond to that temptation after that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think we often, what I've felt is that we've forgotten when we talk about homosexuality and same-sex attraction, is we often miss that the call for celibacy is a sacrifice.
Right.
It seems like if you're not same-sex attracted, like if you're attracted to opposite sex, that you have a free outlet, that everything's available to you.
Right.
But that's not true, actually. Your call for sexual purity, whether you're same-sex attracted or not, is still there. Like, the call is the same.
Exactly.
And we do forget that. Real quick, the last question on here. Is it okay to be friends with someone who's LGBTQ+?
Absolutely. Because being friends doesn't immediately say that we are, that's our belief system, that's what we believe, how we believe. But I mean, ultimately, what are we called to do? We're called to love our neighbor. And if our neighbor is regardless of where they're at, this is one area I think the church struggles with it, because it's a really hot topic, and how do you deal with it? We struggle with it a little bit, because but the reality is, just because we're friends with somebody doesn't mean that we're condoning that lifestyle. It doesn't mean that we will become that type of lifestyle. But what we're doing is actually we're doing what we're called to do. We're reaching out to people, and we're called to share Jesus with people. We're called to love our neighbors, and that's what we need to do, actually. It's important.
Yeah. Totally.
It's important that we do that, in my opinion.
I hope so. I hope it's okay to be friends with an LGBTQ person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just struck with, who was Jesus friends with, right? Like, Jesus hung out with the people that I wasn't allowed to hang out with when I was a kid. So, no, for sure.
And I get that I get that there can be some challenges in that, and even but go outside of that. If we're friends with somebody who is just living in sin and debauchery of any kind, it doesn't really matter what it is. But there's always dangers there. But we have to take those right precautions. But it doesn't mean that we're not friends with them. That doesn't mean that we don't love them and care for them and treat them with respect. I mean, ultimately, we're all created in the image of God. And we have to treat them in such a manner that that is respectful and honoring to God's creation.
Okay, good.
Chewin.